I had the great pleasure to spend some time recently in Montana visiting founders in and around the Bozeman area, including many of who've received grants from the Vela Education Fund and are part of Vela's founder network. And I had the wonderful opportunity to meet our guest today, Lindsay Vos. Lindsay is a former public school teacher who launched Wild Wonders out of her garage in Belgrade, Montana in 2022. She opened with 4 students, including her 2 children. And today, Wild Wonders is located on a 5-acre farmstead property near her home. It has 22 students, K to 6th grade, who attend the mixed age drop off program Monday through Thursday from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. And she has 35 students registered already for fall. Told me she can't keep up with demand. Is that right, Lindsay?
Yeah, it definitely is. There is a lot of interest and desire for this type of education. And more, I feel like as new groups of people seem to be coming to the Bozeman area and just really valuing a different type of education and seeking that out. So yes, the demand is high. Trying to keep up with it is where the challenge lies, I guess.
Yeah, so we'll get into all of that throughout our conversation, but let's start a little bit with your background. You were a public school teacher in California for a number of years. Then you kind of discovered alternative education, homeschooling, and hybrid homeschooling. And then, of course, COVID led to all sorts of educational changes and ultimately brought your family to Montana. But let's start with, why did you decide to go into education in the first place? And what was your experience like as a classroom teacher in public schools?
So when I was in college in my undergraduate, education was not something that was on my radar at all. Both of my parents are educators, so I grew up with that as really a strong background. But I actually wanted to be an OBGYN and deliver babies. And then when I started at my undergraduate and just kind of got a little bit more into all of the classes and kind of seeing the long-term education plan for that, I just realized that that actually was not at all what I wanted to do. So my degree is actually in psychology, and my I had thought about doing maybe child psychology, working with kids with eating disorders, and then as one of my psychology classes, we had to do child development, and so I actually had to do some hours just in a public school setting in the area and just get a little bit more experience with the kids. And when I was there, I knew right away, like, ooh, as much as I thought I could steer myself away from the education path, um, that was that was really probably what I was cut out for. So I ended up graduating with a degree in psychology and a minor in math, and then from there, I taught 1 year in Ohio, which is where I had gone to college. So I actually taught at the private school that I grew up going to, and I taught high school and then did middle school sports and taught in middle school, and it was a great experience because it made me realize that while education probably was for me, that age level was not necessarily for me. So I moved to California with a friend who I grew up with in Ohio, and I got a job at a preschool in California, and just really like it was a wild thing. The way it all worked out, I was like, well, I've got money to live here for 3 months. If I don't get a job, we'll see what happens. And I got a job really quickly at a preschool. And so I ended up midway through going back and getting my teaching credential and getting my master's, and just knew that elementary was where I wanted to be. Preschool wasn't the right niche for me. I wanted a little bit more, but that led me to getting my teaching credential, getting my master's, and finding elementary, which is really where my heart is. And so I got a job. I was able to get a job right after graduating, and I taught kindergarten and first grade for 1 year, and then I taught straight kindergarten the following year, and then um, I had my first daughter, and so I actually transitioned to a different school in California, another public school, and then I taught fourth grade for many years. So I kind of bopped all over the place in terms of age levels, but when I originally started, I said, oh my, okay, kindergarten, this is where my heart is. I will always want to teach kindergarten. I love the little kids so much. And then when the fourth grade opening happened, I kind of felt very intimidated and thought, oh my gosh, I don't know if I can do these older kids. This is very close to middle school age. And then I of course fell in love with that too. And so kind of as the years have gone on, I've found that actually the upper elementary, those third, fourth, fifth, sixth graders, actually is what I really, really love. I think it's the challenge with being able to push them a little bit and a little bit of the independence, and I think it was that age that really it taught me a lot about project based learning, but it also taught me that it's so fun to do project based learning, especially with that age group. And that's just, I think it, you look back and sometimes you don't have the perspective until you look back and you're like, wow, it's amazing how everything kind of fell in line in a way that led me to where I am now. Um, and who knows if it wouldn't have been the same, if all of those different things wouldn't have happened, if I hadn't have been pushed to work in fourth grade and face that fear and then fall in love with it, and just it's just funny seeing how it all works out. But it definitely, the path led me to, I think, the vision I had and how much I value this type of education.
Yeah, and so you were working in the public schools for several years, and then a lot of the founders that I have on the podcast go right from working in the public schools to launching
Yeah,
sort of an innovative education model. But for you, it was sort of leaving the public schools and then discovering alternative education models that ultimately was the
yeah.
launching point for Wild Wonders. I wonder if you can talk a little bit about leaving the system and kind of discovering homeschooling and hybrid homeschooling first.
Absolutely. So after a few years of teaching fourth grade in public school, I ended up having my second daughter, and it was quite a commute from where we lived in Orange County to where I was teaching in more North Orange County. So it I just got to the point where I didn't want to be teaching full time. I really wanted to be able to be home a little bit more. I wanted to be able to actually experience a little bit of my second daughter. I felt like I missed a lot the first time around. Let's put it that way. And I just didn't want to do that again. So I ended up actually working out with the public school system a shared contract. And so I taught 4 days a week, and then I had a teaching partner who taught the fifth day. So it gave me 3 days at home. And it was wonderful. It did what it needed to, but it still just wasn't enough. So I took that next year, and I really tried to figure out what was the path going to be, but I knew that public school wasn't going to be the path anymore. Like, um I looked at different schools maybe closer to our house. But if you I was tenured, so it's, then you lose, and then you're starting over again, and a lot of times you can't share a contract for the first couple of years when you're starting in a new district, so that kind of defeated the whole purpose of trying to be home more. So um I could feel myself fizzling maybe a little bit, and I was just ready for something different. So it was, again, when you put things into the universe, sometimes I strongly believe they just it happens when it's supposed to happen. And so I had a great friend. She had found this post on Facebook for this hybrid homeschool program in Southern Orange County, and she sent it to me. I ended up communicating with the woman who started it. It was very exciting because it seemed like, wow, this is going to be great. It's 2 days a week. There's another half day that I can do if I want to. This gives me the opportunity to be home more. It was a lot closer to my house. And it really was this world I knew nothing about. So I think I mentioned this to you when we were in person, but when you're getting your teaching credential and you're getting your master's, um, it's such a streamline. path of where you're supposed to go, right? There were a few kids who, I shouldn't say kids, but there were a few adults who, when we finished our credential and masters, they ended up going to the private school route. But really, the majority of people, you're funneled right into the public school system. That's just how it is, right? You have to go to your public school for student teaching opportunities. You have to go for your internship hours. There's never any flexibility with that. So it's just such a streamlined process, and I think that because of that, um, I didn't even really know about homeschooling. I mean, I really don't think I didn't grow up like that, and that wasn't something you learn when you're in your teaching credential program. So um, this hybrid homeschooling thing was just so interesting to me, and I loved the model of it being, um, for families who valued homeschooling for whatever reason that can be, and that's so many different reasons for different families, but value to be a homeschooling family, wanting the flexibility of maybe not having their kids in school 5 days a week, wanting to have a little bit more of a control, or at least maybe understanding or a say in what type of curriculum they're using, and then also wanting a credentialed teacher teaching some of those core subjects that maybe at home they don't feel super confident, or as their kids are getting older they don't feel confident, right? So it was just such an amazing model. I loved hearing all about it, and it was also very literature focused, which for me, I'm a very literature focused person, so it just felt like it was going to be a great um just a great move, so I did end up I finished, teaching public school that year, and then I started teaching in that hybrid the following year. Um, and I absolutely loved it. It was just, it was like this world of education that I didn't know existed, that I just loved the model. I loved the balance. It just felt like a great balance for the kids. It felt like a great balance for the teachers, um, where everyone just like had more of a capacity to give it all when they were there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, complete sense. So that was sort of your entry point into unconventional education. You fell in love with it. You were with the hybrid school for, was it a couple of years
Mhm,
before COVID
mhm.
hit? Yeah. So tell us sort of what happened next.
So I taught for the first year. Um, and I taught the entire first year. I had a second, third, fourth grade combo class, and it was wonderful. I think I had 14 kids. The other thing that was a huge change for me was just the class size. The school was small. We had um, Ooh, I have to think back. The first year, I believe there were 3 classes, and they were mixed age classes. And as I said, my first year of teaching in my own classroom in public school was a kindergarten first grade combo class, which is about as challenging as it can get when you're, like those are vastly different ages, even though they're only 1 year apart. But they're also not independent because they're so young. So it was like I had experienced it, but then for many years I hadn't experienced mixed ages at all. It was just kindergarten and then fourth grade. So being in mixed ages was also really interesting. It was kind of like um, reminding me of the power of kids being together when they're not the same age group and not necessarily at the same level and not necessarily doing the same curriculum. It was definitely a learning experience, and it taught me a lot, but it also reminded me how powerful it was. That first year was wonderful. The second year, I went back, and when that was COVID. So my oldest daughter had started kindergarten, and she went to the public school that was in our neighborhood. And in March, I guess, is when, they left for spring break, and then we never went back. So she stayed home for the rest of the school year. And then I was home teaching online. So it, it was it was one of those things where it was a really hard time for everybody, and there were so many terrible things that were happening. um, but then there was also some beautiful things that came out of it. And that was, I would say, more of like what we experienced as our family, just the beauty of being home together again, of slowing life down, of seeing what she was doing in public school, um, and just realizing how inappropriate it was for her, um, and just like me being able to teach her at home. And she didn't have there wasn't a lot going on, I would say, in terms of like virtual learning and stuff like that. I mean, she was a kindergartner, so I wouldn't have really wanted her on the computer screen all day, but at the same time there wasn't much that was happening, so I was really supplementing at home and getting to do like what I thought was really powerful for her. And it was just so beautiful. It was um, as hard as it was at that time, it was amazing. So that following year, that was good for me. I knew right there, I was like, okay, I had teetered back and forth about whether public school was going to be the right thing anyway for her, and it just gave me what I needed to kind of boost me over the edge. So the following year, we went back to school and I took her with me to the hybrid. So she did her first grade year at the hybrid and I was teaching. And it was a great year. It was really good for her. She got a lot more of what she needed. Um, when your class size is small, it's like you can differentiate so much more. And she was able to get what she needed versus just kind of falling through the cracks, I think.
Yeah, and one of the other sort of beautiful things that your family experienced at that time was also realizing that you wanted a different sort of setting, a different lifestyle. And so you ended up moving to Montana. I wonder if you can share that story.
Yeah, so that the summer before I took Paisley with me to start at the hybrid, we had come out to Montana, just for a vacation. At my mom has a house in Big Sky, so we went out there for. We were supposed to go for a week, and we ended up staying for the entire summer. And it was summer, so I had the flexibility to do that, and my husband was able to just work remotely from Big Sky, and that was pretty much the tipping point. We had talked about it, we had thought about it. Um, that was but that was it. I think we had pretty much committed at that point. Like as long as my husband was able to work remotely and they would allow him to stay with his job and move to Montana, then we were going to do it. So he eventually got the go ahead, and um, it's just there were so many wonderful things about California, and we were there for 14 years. So it was a long time, way longer than I really ever anticipated being there, to be honest. Um, and it was such a wonderful thing, and leaving our friends and our community, and I mean, leaving the hybrid homeschool was so hard, so hard, because I loved teaching there. It taught me so much as an educator. It taught me so much about what the path was that I wanted for my own children. Um, and just the community of families and my teaching partners and my great friend who started it, like it was very difficult to leave that. But um being in Montana is like a breath of fresh air. It was just, for a long time, I mean, I grew up on 5 acres of land, like on a dirt road with cows next door. That's how I grew up. And just being outside all the time and being in the woods all the time and just freedom, and my kids didn't have that in California. I mean, it's it's so many people, it's tight, it's fast paced, it's keeping up with the Joneses all the time. We could touch our neighbor's house on the side of us. It just wasn't the same type of like free childhood that I remember and I value so much about the way I grew up. And it had been always what I had wanted for my kids. Um, but you get stuck kind of, so it was, I felt like that vacation to Big Sky that summer and just seeing like, this is it. Like I can give my kids this. Um, it just pushed us over. So we went back at the end of that summer. I taught for that final year. Paisley came with me to the hybrid, and we pretty much spent that year wrapping it up, figuring out where were we going to be, where did we want to live. We didn't know that Bozeman was where it was going to be either. We knew Montana, but we went and visited lots of different places in Montana, just trying to see like what we really thought was going to be the right place for us. I'm so glad it's Bozeman. I'm so glad that we ended up here. I mean, it definitely happened because that's what was supposed to happen. But yeah, just that vision of seeing our kids being able to grow up like this, and really have a childhood again, and just like rewind a little, rewind back, get back a little bit, and hold on to that childhood as long as possible. It's like Montana was the place.
And it's just so stunning. I hadn't been to Montana until visiting you all there, and just blown away by its
Amazing.
beauty, and can't wait to get back to visit. So I see why you fell in love with it. And so you
Yes.
moved to Montana, and you at that point still hadn't decided to be an education entrepreneur. You thought, well,
No.
I'll just find a hybrid homeschool program here, right? Was that what you were thinking?
Yeah. So when we first came here, we came in July. So I mean, I knew that public school was not going to be the path for. I really had hoped to never have to go back to public school, and I knew that my kid. I didn't think public school was going to be necessarily the right place for my kids. And every child is different, right? I knew that for Paisley, that was not going to be the right path for her. I didn't. I thought maybe Louise would. Maybe that would be the right path for her. I also didn't know enough yet because we were so new. I hadn't scoped out the different schools. I hadn't heard about the different schools. I wanted to know more. So that year, I was home and I homeschooled Paisley. Louise went to preschool 3 days a week, and then she was home with us, kind of homeschooling as a 3-year-old, not really doing anything, but just playing with us the other days. And we met a sweet little girl in our neighborhood whose mom taught art in the public school on Wednesday. So she would come over and I would kind of homeschool the two girls together, and they're the same age. So that was kind of wonderful. It gave Paisley a little bit of socializing. We found this wonderful farm out here that did like a little homeschool program. And it was just 1 day a week, and the kids would go to the farm, and it was all like outdoor farm education. Um, and I was like, this is it. This is what I want. This is exactly what I want. This is what I've been searching for. This is what I wanted my kids to grow up with. Um, so we did the program, and she liked it, but it was 1 day a week, and it was maybe 6 or 8 weeks session. That's it. They didn't do it in the winter time. It was only a fall session before it got to be too cold, and then a spring session once it wasn't deep winter anymore. And there was no core academics whatsoever. It was just farm education. They would nature journal, but it was life skill types of things, right? So I absolutely loved it. I chatted with them. I'm like, how can we do more? Like, how can we make this into a quote unquote full time, not really full time, but how can we make this a program where kids can come multiple days a week? How can we get the academics in there as well for parents who are homeschooling, but they want a credentialed teacher teaching their kids some of those subjects? How do we include the farming with it? And we had some great conversations, but it wasn't the direction that they wanted to go in. They were kind of happy with what it was, and the program still exists. It's wonderful and it's very popular. Um, but that was kind of like, I just realized it doesn't exist here. It does not exist. It didn't exist in Orange County. It doesn't exist here. You can get hybrid where it's academics, you're sitting at a desk, very traditional types of learning, but 2 days a week or 3 days a week. You can get farming, life skill, outdoor education, no academics, 1 day a week. But why can't we have all of it? Why can't we put it together and give kids this experience 4 days a week where everything is included? So that was it. I had to do it.
Yeah, you had to
Time
build
to
it.
start it.
And you also said that there weren't as many secular,
Yes,
options as
yes.
right. Well,
The,
yeah.
the only two hybrids that exist that are very academic are they're religious based. So um And I think that's been a really big thing here too, is there have been a number of homeschoolers, as sometimes we call them kitchen table homeschoolers, very just traditional. One of the parents is home homeschooling their children at home, not, co-ops, anything like that. So there are a lot of kitchen table homeschoolers. There's a lot more growth in the homeschooling world too, where there's co-ops that are happening maybe once a week, maybe twice a week. There are a couple hybrid options, but everything is religious based. Um, or the farming things, which aren't necessarily religious based, but just aren't all encompassing, kind of as how I wanted it to be.
Yeah. So then what happened? So you said, okay, I have to do it. What was the timing of this? When did you realize you had to do something? And then when did you do it?
So that year that I homeschooled at home was 21, 22. And that was when Paisley went to the farm, and it was wonderful. And I would just say towards the end of that school year, you know, as we were approaching summer of 2022, I was like, okay, I better get it together because I got to figure out what's going to happen here. I got to do this. So that summer, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try, like, I came up with the name Wild Wonders. I was like, I'm going to just try a summer camp. Like, we'll do it out of the garage. Let's see how it goes. We live in a really, we live in an area where we're in a neighborhood, but like we have chickens and there's a creek in our back. And so there's enough space, right? Like it's a neighborhood, but more spacious than obviously where we came from in California. So I was like, I can do this. Like, I'll convert the garage and we'll go from there. So I did that the summer of 2022. And it
And
was
you
very,
launched, sorry to interrupt you, Lindsay, but
oh, that's great.
you launched like an LLC at that point, or
No,
had you not even gotten there yet?
no. I
Okay.
was like, let's just test this out and see what
Yeah.
happens. So it was just Wednesdays, one day a week, a drop off, type of summer camp program, all outdoor based, nature journaling. Kids were, involved with the chickens in the backyard. They had to do the little chores, that kind of stuff. Very like low key in our neighborhood. I don't know how the neighbors felt about that, but it's all good. So it was very successful, and I met wonderful people in the community. Some homeschool families, which was really awesome. Many public school families who were just on summer break, but just we weren't very connected at that point. It had only been 1 year, and like I had said, it was tough to get into the homeschooling community here. It was tough to break through. Like, people, they've got their people, for however they've met each other, but they've definitely, there was a lot of, like, the groups were already formed. It was tough for me to enter into it. um and so it was wonderful to just have different people, like, oh, I know this girl named Lindsay and she's doing this. And it created this really wonderful network of people, who I know I would have never met in Bozeman otherwise. So this summer, I mean, once summer camp started, I was like, okay, this is for sure got to be something that I do. So I mean, I took the summer to really start buckling down and figuring out, okay, I mean, Carrie, I know nothing about business. I mean, nothing. I didn't know anything. I'm like, okay, I have to write an enrollment packet. Okay, I have to form parent forms. I mean, I have to make a website. I have to create a social media account. Granted, a lot of this stuff did not happen right away, because trying to do this all myself and not really knowing how to do it was very overwhelming, I would say. Um, but yeah, I just took the summer, and I spent time figuring out which curriculum I wanted to use. Um, and I took bits and pieces from everywhere. I brought some stuff that I used in public school that I just thought was so wonderful, greatest language arts curriculum I'd ever used. So I really, I stuck with that. I pulled a little bit from what I had done at the hybrid in California, and like, okay, I love that homeschool math curriculum. We're going to use this. And then I just started really researching, and uh, we had done a little bit of project based. I was introduced a bit to it, I would say, in public school, and I just kind of took it from there and started. writing my own curriculum. So I knew what I wanted to do. I knew what the standards were that I wanted to cover, that year, with the mixed ages. And I started creating projects, and I started intertwining everything together and figuring out, how was this standard going to be addressed, and how was I going to cover this math concept. And that was the beginning of Wild Wonders in my garage.
Yeah, and so you opened with 4 students in the fall of 2022, including your 2 children. Tell us
Yep.
about that first year. What was that like?
So, so I had Paisley, and then I had 3 other students, and then Louise was still going to her preschool program, 3 days a week, and then she'd be home the other days, and she'd join school with us. It was the same. I did the same exact schedule. It was 9 to 2, Monday through Thursday. Um, we started in my garage. I had the curriculum. I purchased the curriculum for the kids. We spent until it got to be super wintry, we were outside a lot of the day, I would say, doing, doing our academics back and forth. Um, I had a program. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday was what I considered to be like the full-time students. Wednesdays was part of their week, but it was more of what I consider to be an enrichment day. So it was open to other kids who maybe were homeschoolers, but they really were in their routine homeschooling at home, or maybe they went to a different co-op on the other days. But they just wanted some outdoor nature education one day a week and socializing for their kids. So that Wednesday thing, it started small, but it blew up so fast. And I just started to see like the dynamic in Bozeman with the homeschooling community. Like I had said before, there's a lot of homeschoolers, um, but a lot of them are they've got their routine down already. They already know what they want to do. However, whether they're going to co-ops, whether just at home, homeschooling with their family, whatever, whatever works for their schedule. But there were a lot of people who were like, ooh, one day a week. Oh, this is great. Oh, socializing. Oh, outdoors. My kids being outdoors all the time. Like, I love this. My kids learning about, making greenhouses, about taking care of the chickens, about foraging for plants and how we can make, natural balms and just all this stuff, but it was a huge, huge thing. So, um, in February of that year, so that's 2023. It was that first school year, but in February, it was like I could not fit in the garage anymore. And this crazy opportunity fell into my lap of a friend that I knew had a yoga studio very close to our house, and she was closing down the business, and she needed the property to be rented so that she didn't have to be in her lease anymore. It was in a strip mall, basically, but nice strip mall. But strip mall. So for a farm school, not exactly the ideal location, but it was going to serve its purpose for that time. So we moved over. We moved in the middle of that school year. Um,
And
we
how many students did you have at that point, Lindsay, from the 5 you started with?
um Okay, let me think here. I think I had around 9 kids, so
Great.
9 full-time kids, and then that
Plus.
Wednesday
Yeah.
there were like 16 to 20 kids that were coming on that Wednesday.
Wow.
So I had hired somebody else, and she was helping me on that Wednesday. I had I had been in contact with MSU, um, to see if any of their education students would want to do internships, anything like that. So I was connected well with MSU, which was really a wonderful thing.
Did you
Um,
get interns that
yes,
way?
yes, and
Oh,
I
great.
still have them now, which has been like a wonderful thing. So that was a great connection.
Good.
Um, I guess that's like a bonus of living in a college town, which I'd never been in a college town before. So that was this is a wonderful thing. I'm like, ooh, you got to grab onto that resource. So we we moved over to that new space, and we would still walk. It's like a half a mile from my house, so the kids would walk to my house every day, and we would be in the backyard with the chickens. We would be in the creek. We'd be in the big. There was just a lot of open space. Um, so it worked out for what it needed to be for the end of that school year, which was last school year. So there was a lot of transition that happened that year. I'd say we went from 4 full-time students to 9 full-time students, or it may have been more than that. I'm kind of struggling. There were a number of families that came throughout the school year. So
Mm.
nine, I think 9 sounds right. Um, and then the Wednesday was wild. It was so big. So as I ended that school year though, I knew I was like, I've got to find a place. Like I can't, I my value is this outdoor education. My value is project-based learning, but using our environment with everything we do, right? It's animals, it's teaching these skills of responsibility and um, being leaders and taking care of the animals and understanding how to take care of the animals and gardening and all of those things. I'm like, we can't do that in a strip mall. Like what, we can't do all of it in my backyard either. So um I spent, well, I mean, I visited probably 10 different locations. Like anytime something would pop up on Craigslist or Facebook, I would go over, I would look at it, and it just nothing was exactly right until July. And I went to pick up pizza for our family, and I was just waiting for the pizza, and I started talking to this gentleman next to me, and he had actually put in an offer on a property, a 5-acre property, that day, and he said, I'm buying this because I have a custom home building shop, a business, and I need a place that there's no zoning, there's no covenants, no HOA, where I can put my shop on the property. But it happens to be 5 acres. There's a house on the property. There's a barn. There's an arena. There's 3 acres in the front. I don't have any use for any of that stuff. And so that's how it all came to be. And so he
Wow.
got the house, and we met multiple times over the summer. He loved, because he's an entrepreneur too, he has been in business for many years, 15 to 20 years. Um, but he just kept saying, like, Lindsay, I know what it's like. And Lindsay, I see, being an entrepreneur is not for everybody, but like, girl, you got it. And I was like, well, thanks. I appreciate you believing in me so much. Um,
Wow.
but it was just, yeah, so it worked out, and we moved in. He closed on the house like on August 21st. We started school on September 2nd. So we moved, set up, got everything ready, got animals, and here we are.
Amazing. And so now you have 22 students,
22
K to
students.
6.
Yep.
Yeah. And are you still running a part-time program too, or are you did you
No.
decide just to do the full-time? Okay. And
Yeah, it's
how did you make, what sort of changes did you make in this second full year of operating? Yeah.
well, I would say, yeah, second year of operating, but first real year. That's how it feels to me. I say that all
Okay.
the time. I say this is like the first real year. I mean, this year has given me the chance to play out the vision of what Wild Wonders was supposed to be. Being in my garage, being in a strip mall, not exactly farm school ish, right? I did what I could, and obviously, obviously, it was great enough that the families wanted to come back, right?
Mm.
But not an ideal situation. So this year, this is it though. This year was it. I mean, we so last year, Paisley, my daughter, was the oldest. So she was a third grader last year. She was 8. This year we had up through 12. So um and I hired another teacher. So last year I was by myself with all of them. And then this year I hired another teacher. So, and we had the space too, which made a really big difference because we had found I had found this property. So I have a kindergarten, first, second grade class, and I hired a teacher to teach that class. And then I have a 3rd through 6th grade, and I'm the one who teaches these older kids. So we, something that was different this year was just the ability to really have that. We call it our learning block time, but um, having that learning block time and being separate and really being able to hone in on what those kids need academically. Um, and developmentally what's appropriate for them, right? Rather than me trying to be in 9 different places at one time by myself, really having those kindergarten, first grade, second grade kids together, and then having the third through sixth grade kids together for our learning block. Um, and that's kind of like our heavy academic time, I would say. And then, the rest of the day, we're really together, whether it's outside, starting our day with our morning outdoor exploration time, the farm chores time where the kids are all working as a team, taking care of the animals. And then we have a project-based learning time, which is really what fuels the whole vision of the school, but where we are together for that. So the kids are in groups, the kindergartners are working with the fifth graders, and the first graders are with the second graders, and everybody is mixed together. Um, so right now, just as an example, so next week is our last week of school. All year, the kids have formed businesses. So in the beginning of the year, we did a lot of things to talk about what it's like to be an entrepreneur. And they, had some interviews with some people, and they wrote letters, and we researched it. And um, the kids all came up with businesses, and they are mixed age groups. So they got to go into whatever business really they were interested in. And so throughout the year, the kids have been learning about, when you're producing products, how do you know how much to, you keep track of your materials, and then you figure out the costs. And then what do we do with the cost of those goods? We want to double it, right? Before we figure out how much we're going to charge. All the things, the marketing, the advertising, the public speaking practice, so right now they're really just finishing up the production of their products. We've got a group that made custom made cat collars. We've got kids who used herbs that they grew at school to make essential oils. There are essential oils they're using to make bath salts and homemade cleaners. We've got a group that's been sewing pillows and needle felting designs on the pillows. We've got a group making recipe books. We've got kids knitting scarves. So there's all these different things that they're doing. And they work in their mixed age groups. And it's usually what we spend our afternoons doing once we come back inside from lunch and farm chores. And then they've figured out the day and the times and all of the setup for their big art fest is what they wanted to call it. So they've invited people from the community to come and purchase their different products, and so that's one of the big projects units, I guess, that I would say we did this year. And we just tried to ingrain, or we tried to weave all of the academics into it. So the math and the researching and the writing and the reading that we did. So that's kind of that's a time where the kids really are all together. And I plan on that being the case all of the years going forward. It's just not something. It's so powerful. It's something that's really important. I want to keep the same.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about going forward, and just to reinforce that your program is a hybrid homeschool program, so the families are legally considered
Yes.
homeschoolers, but
Yep.
they're coming to your program 4 days a week from 9 to 2 as a drop-off hybrid program. And you are seeing skyrocketing growth for your
Yeah.
program. You already have 35 students registered for this coming academic year. You're
Yep.
going to be adding a middle school in the coming years. You said when I visited that you're getting inquiries every day from interested parents. I wonder if you could talk a bit about what is attracting parents to Wild Wonders, both your current families
Mhm.
and these inquiries you're getting from others.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, So yes, next year we're going to be splitting into four different classes. We're adding a transitional kindergarten for those 4-year-olds or 5-year-olds that parents just aren't ready to push to kindergarten. Then there'll be a straight kindergarten class, then there'll be a 1-2 class, and then there'll be a third through sixth grade class. And then, like you mentioned, the following year, so that would be the 25-26. I'm going to add the middle school, so there'll be a seventh and eighth grade. So that 6, 7, 8 will really be a separate entity as well, but part of Wild Wonders. Um, it's funny because parents will come for tours and they'll ask, like, what who is Wild Wonders for? Or is there anybody that Wild Wonders is not for? And I think that's such a it really kind of caught me off guard because it wasn't something that I had necessarily processed before, but it's such a good question. And so the best way I could answer that and kind of answer your question too is I think that um I think that what we're doing to kids in traditional learning settings is just not developmentally appropriate. Um, I think that, the old kindergarten is now pre-K, right? Like what kids were doing in first grade is now what's being expected in kindergarten. I mean, we all know this, right? I think this is a touched on subject all the time. Um, and in addition to that, in addition to those academic concepts that we're expecting kids to know and do at such a young age, and it not being developmentally appropriate for all kids, I also think the lack of outside time and how much kids are expected to just be sitting in a classroom is also not developmentally appropriate. And I think that, in 2024, we're seeing a lot of the effects of that in kids. Um, and so I get a lot of people from public schools, but I also get them from some private schools around here. And it's everywhere. It's not just Bozeman. It's just, again, I think the expectations, the stress, the pressure, all of it just starts to compound in kids. And I think that we are getting to the point where there's more and more research coming out and more people feeling brave enough to speak out about it too, that parents are being educated and parents are seeing this and thinking, oh, wait a second, I don't want my child to hate learning at the age of 9. There are so many more years that they have to be in school. I don't want my kid to not want to go to school when they're in third grade. I want them to love school. I want them to love learning. I want them to associate learning with positive thoughts and excitement, um, not dread and not exhaustion and anxiety and pressure. Um, our kids are stressed out way too young, way too young. So I think a lot of people that contact me want, I hear it all the time. I would say in almost every single one of we do ILP meetings, individualized learning plan meetings in the beginning of school year and end of summer, I guess, right before the school year starts. And I think every single one of the meetings last year, when we say, what is a priority for you? What do you want to see? What do you want your child to come out of this year with? And I think every single person said, I just want my kid to like learning again. I want my kids to be excited about school. I want them to want to go to school. I want them to be excited about learning new things. And I want them to see the real life connection to the learning, not just, I have to do it because it's in my workbook.
Mm. Yeah, and it sounds
So,
like you're seeing more and more families wanting that, and
yeah,
you're very much a part of that now. They know that that's possible, that you've built this new kind of joyful learning space for families, and so if you build it, they might be more attracted
they
to it.
will
And it's just
come.
so
Yes.
great that that's what's happened for you. So as we begin to wrap up, Lindsay, I'd love to hear now, kind of reflecting on your 2-year entrepreneurial journey. You said you had no business experience before that, but apparently you're a born entrepreneur, as
I don't
your
know about that, Carrie.
as your entrepreneur mentor, noticed in you as well. But what has been sort of one of the big reflections for you as an entrepreneur? What are, as you think of yourself now as an entrepreneur, what has that been like?
I think, I mean, it's something I tell my kids, my own kids, but it's also something we talk about at school a lot. Um, you got to be brave. If you know that something has to exist, if you know that there has to be something better, you have to be brave and you have to do it. I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, I know how to teach. I know how to write curriculum. I'm good with people, right? But I didn't know anything about starting a business. And but I think the fear, and being nervous and feeling like you're unsure of how to do things, it stops us so much, and we can't allow it to stop us. Um, we have to make it happen if it's something that we feel really strongly and really believe in. And I try to tell my own kids that all the time, because I want them to know that as they're growing up, that it's okay to do things that are hard. It's okay to do things that we're not experts at, but we learn as we go. But if it's something you feel is important and it is like in your soul to do it, you got to do it. Something else is I definitely have learned. I had a wonderful friend of mine tell me, um, it, we're not all going to be good at everything, right? We all have our talents. We all have things that we shine at. And then there's things that are harder for us and we're not great at those things. It is so much more valuable to just ask for help for in those things where you are not dynamic, and put your energy towards the things that you do thrive in, right? And just get help for the other things. And it took me a bit of time, but I've definitely gotten to that point. And that's more of just the business piece of it, but not understanding how to do the accounting part of it, I'm going to ask for help. you know, I am not great at the marketing stuff. I'm going to find somebody to do it for me. So um, I think trying to delegate a little bit and just know that there's things that are where my passion are. There's things that I am very good at. And that's where I need to continue to put my efforts and, ask for help in the other areas. But it just, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard. It's very talking to other people who have done similar things, right? And started schools. And I've connected with some of the people that you had put me in contact with in Bozeman area, which is so wonderful. And um, it's good to talk to people who have also, they just kind of have an understanding of it, right? Like it's so hard and um, it's heavy. That's what she said to me one day. She's like, it's just heavy. I'm like, that is such a great way to describe it. It is heavy because there's so much that relies on our shoulders, right? And we have the vision for these things and it's like they need to happen, but it's hard. Um, but we got to do it. It's what our community deserves. It's what our own children deserve. It's what the children in our community deserve. And we need more people who are going to be brave and start things like this to give more opportunities for our area. Um, but I guess I'm glad I stuck it out. I'm glad I stuck it out and that we've given this opportunity to the families because I see how powerful it is.
Ah, just such great reflections and advice for new founders going forward, Lindsay, to go for it, to build what you
Go
can't
for
find,
it. Go
to
for it.
realize how hard and heavy it will be, but how rewarding and how important it is for the young people in our communities. So just so great to hear all about your success and excited to see the future growth of Wild Wonders in the years to come. For my listeners and viewers who want to connect with you, follow your progress, learn more about Wild Wonders, what is the best way for them to do that?
There we have an Instagram. Well, actually, the website's probably the easiest because I think the Instagram is connected on there as well. But our website is just wildwondersmt.com. And then uh my email address is on there, and then our Instagram is on there, but yes, absolutely. I mean, I think it's important for us to all stick together, and stick together, but also like we need to help each other. I've connected with a wonderful school in California who I had done some sort of coaching with, and they've been in the game a lot longer than I have. And it's so helpful. They've helped me so much. I would love to be able to help other people and just pass things along, that maybe they need, or even just vent, like tell me everything. Okay, I'll talk you through it. Let's do this. We got to stick with it. So absolutely. I mean, I would love it. Please connect if you would like to, if you need any suggestions, any advice, anything like that, I'd be happy to help.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay Vose, for being on the Liberated podcast, and best wishes for
Thank you,
Wild
Carrie.
Wonders.
Thank you.
Thank
It was
you.
wonderful to see you again.